Any comments on the lunch other than the fact it was nourishing and somewhat tasty?
Thought that sandwich was pretty good.
Yeah, it's actually not bad food, you know.
Yeah, you shouldn't be getting many complaints if you do. Too bad. Don't allow more here. Okay, I need motion on the agenda.
Vote to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Motion made and seconded, all in favor, aye, for the same sign. Next, approval of minutes of June 2nd.
So second.
Moved by Wendell, second by Doug, all in favor, aye, opposed, the same sign. Now, let's see. The conflicts of interest we're not concerned about, because we don't have them, not in this committee. Any public comment? Okay. No supervisors present that aren't part of the committee. Administrator report.
Yeah, I thought I'd just give you a brief update since we're together a little bit on a couple of different items. COVID-19, we've had 62 positive cases. This is as of yesterday, out of about 3,920. That's a 1.6% rate. And so the people that we test, you generally are tested for a reason. They either have had symptoms or they've been exposed. That rate of 1.6 is well below the state average and the national average. So the positive is there. Unfortunately, the county did have a second death, and that will be coming out in a press release today, of a second death associated with COVID-19. A person in their 80s, multiple underlying conditions, had been in the hospital for quite a while, passed away. And I will say this too, that just the latest trend in Polk County, and we're hearing this elsewhere, but in Polk County has been younger people who are out and probably getting exposure with their friends or whatever. But in those cases, you know, when you think about it, we only have 17 people who are currently have it, but of those people that their symptoms are generally milder and less serious. Not to suggest that it's not serious. We want to make sure people know that this can be serious and debilitating and dangerous for anybody. But we are seeing a little bit of a difference in who is getting it now. We're in the Justice Center. I will just briefly say that the courts are putting together a plan. The judges are putting together a plan to open up the courts for jury trials once again. So we're working with them to make sure that we have safety measures in place for jurists, for people who come and work at the trials, and for visitors and so on. But the judges are doing a good job of putting things together so that when they do open them up, and we have those, they'll be safe. I want to also mention the goal setting process you all started last month or at the board meeting. And of the goals, they really, I'm looking at them, they all relate to this committee. Reducing substance abuse, increased public safety, or reducing crime. Expanded broadband, which is an important aspect of keeping people, I think, entering the justice system, because if they are active and engaged and they see hope, and today people can work anywhere in the world right here in Polk County because of remote working with broadband. We think that's very much related to crime and keeping people out of crime. And then improve parks and tourism, which, you know, you think of what your ideas are with the ATV, UTV committee, and access for people to get involved, which is good, and then the roads to get there. The final thing I'll say is I keep reading and seeing information and anecdotally as well, that with COVID and, you know, people are basically feeling locked up in the cities. I think more people are looking at where can I go to avoid this mess. They also are looking that more people are working remotely. And just like at the county, we have some people that work remotely, that they actually work better and their jobs can be done better working remotely. And so they will stay working remotely. And we think more people, let's say from the cities or wherever, will say, hey, I can do this job, work remotely in a place that's beautiful, has lots of water. And, maybe I grew up in a small town like Milltown or something, and they can work here. So we actually think more people in the future will look at places like Polk County as a home. And so these goals, broadband, parks and tourism, reduce crime, substance abuse, I think all blend together. The next step in that goal setting process, we had the staff, the division heads and some of their key staff, take each of those goals and lay out what are some key things that we're doing now related to that, and what are some key things in the future. We will present those to you for the next board meeting from 3 to 5, just like last time. And then you can react, give your input, make amendments, changes, or whatever, and that will set us on course then to keep working with each committee to implement those things over the course of the next 1 to 3 years or longer.
Right.
That's all I have.
Any comments or questions?
Well, I did see a question on the amount of people and stuff that now they were showing on nightly news and that, all these people on the beaches and they're closing all everything down again and stuff, and it's hit now 50 and below with an average of like 23. So
The
it's,
age.
yes, it's hitting the younger age groups pretty hard right now.
Well, and it's, you gotta be careful because everything's local. And so I'm watching what's happening here in Polk County and the surrounding area. And the key thing is everybody continue to wash your hands, keep your distance, wear a mask as appropriate if you can't keep your distance from people, and do everything we can. Use your good judgment. That's the best.
Common sense.
Doug, did you have a question?
Just a comment on the broadband. I just talked to a friend yesterday, and his 2 sons are in college and they have to work remotely, but he lives in Clam Falls, so they don't have high speed. So he has an office in Siren, so he takes his boys in there every day. But I'm thinking, we've been talking about all the students in the countryside that don't have high speed and can't work remotely, so.
Yeah,
It's a big issue.
it is a big issue and big opportunity. It involves economic development. And we, as a staff, met and said, what are some basic things we can recommend to the board to get us going in the right direction? And it affects everything, the education, our economy. It's going to affect housing. How can we engage developers, investment people, businesses to work with our internet service providers, work together with the county or local government to say, we got to make high-speed cable or high-speed internet available to people.
What is the present status of it that is in the progress as far as
Yeah,
Polk County is?
we've made pretty good progress. When I started with the EDC, we had a couple of small little patches of high-speed internet being put in. Since then, over the last 3 years, we probably had 12 grants, 15 grants approved by the state that will fund internet service providers to help them lay cable. And as you recall, the county, a couple of years ago, they revised some ordinances or passed an ordinance to reduce fees and to partner. If anybody got a grant, if any internet service provider got a grant, the county kind of matched it up to like $1,000. I think just demonstrating a willingness to work with local internet service providers has spurred their activity, but it's also created competition. So now you have internet service providers from Amory, Milltown, Siren. Everybody's kind of racing to get to places like Clam Falls. We actually have a little bit in Clam Falls, but not nearly enough.
There's some, yes.
So we think we can actually help speed that along faster. And I'll tell this story I told earlier in a meeting. if you look in the old days, where did the population go? Well, it started with railroad tracks and people kind of followed railroad tracks. Then it was highways. And today and tomorrow, it's gonna be broadband. That ability to communicate remotely from anybody, with anyone in the world. So if we can get broadband spread throughout this county, I think we can help ourselves in a lot of ways.
Who are the, Mr. Chair,
So,
who are the major, ones that are expanding besides Lakeland and Amory?
But Lakeland, you got, Amory is now called Northwest Communications.
Yeah.
Clear Lake, I believe that's Next Gen, is a smaller company there. Siren Tel comes down into northern Polk County. There's also a small little company called Starwire that has received a grant and has touched down into the Clam Falls, Frederick area.
I'm just a mile from the St. Clair County line, and Somerset is hooked up with, they're part of the Amory Telecoms, or the new name, whatever. And there's people, just across the county line, and there seems to be I was at a meeting town of Farmington last night, and one thing we talked about was there doesn't seem to be much activity in Farmington, Osceola, and town of Alden.
And it doesn't take long to change. And when a internet service provider sees residents, houses, and businesses, they tend to go toward businesses, and then they pick up the houses in between. But also they'll look at where there's a conglomeration of homes. I having worked with them now for a few years, I think we can improve the communication between villages, citizens, businesses, and internet service providers and the county. I think we can improve that cooperation and start targeting new areas and encouraging people to.
I live on Church Road in the town of Alden there, and 2 weeks ago Sunday, I drove around and I checked the fire numbers, and within 3/4 of a mile where I live, there on Middle Pine Lake, there's 4 roads that go off there. There's 56 fire numbers in 3/4 of a mile. And no broadband, you just think what that would be.
Yeah, and once you get the broadband there, then people have to sign up for it. We don't force it on anybody. But yeah, that's key.
There probably isn't, even in a village, I don't think there's that kind of density of population.
Maybe not, you're right.
okay, well, I appreciate the update. Now, Highway Commissioner, what do we got?
Yes, sir. On the service transportation program, the 5 projects we got in the current cycle right now, the town of McKinney Bridge on 270th. We're just in the phase. We got the asbestos report back from DOT, and we're in the process of completing the preliminary plans and reports on that one. Town of Clear Lake on 30th Street down there, we're preparing the approach length justifications on lengthening those approaches due to the skew of the bridge on that one. Town of Beaver on 40th Street, we've got the final bridge plans are ready to go there. We had to purchase a little bit of right of way for temporary limited easements. I think that was $250. We're working on that one. The 4th bridge in the program there on 165th and Apple River, that's in the planning stage as well, moving along as scheduled. County Road M in the service transportation rural one, that's at 90% plans. Those plans have been submitted to the state, just waiting on review back from the state, but that's on schedule and we're ready to go. State Highway 65, although I had emails saying it was pushed to 2027, online in the program, they still showed under 2023, but they dropped the funding from $13 million down to $9 million. So they dropped it down to about 600,000 a mile on that one. The new program that's out in the surface transportation program, we got a couple of new projects coming. I just signed the state maintenance agreements or the contracts for the bridge on County Road B, and that's a replacement, and the bridge on County Road K, That's also a replacement. The third one is the deck replacement on Church Road. I signed that SMA out as well this week. So those three will be coming out. I'll be selecting engineering firms for those. So I'll be reaching out to you guys with the selection sheets and grading the firms once I get their proposals, and you'll be back part of that process. I still have not received the contract for County Road F from Amory to Duranda, but I anticipate getting that shortly this week also on that one. This month on the highway side, we're paving County Road E up north there from W to double E this week. We have a large Bridge 8 culvert for Milltown going in. We start crack sealing on 48 from Bass Lake to County Road double G. Finishing the state mowing this week, starting the state mowing also this week. That should be done by August 1st. We're stripping the Bergman pit for screening sand for winter materials coming up here, third week of the month. The FEMA pits final cleanup is complete. The final submittal will go to FEMA next week. Once we have a patch on 180th to complete, a little bit on that one. Highway 8 in the intersection of 150th Avenue or Street. That intersection work begins July 13th. They're adding left turn lanes to Highway 8 there. So that'll be under construction for the next several months. And then down on 35 north of Osceola there by County Road S, we have an LFA project. Counties, we're replacing some culverts down there, which will be detouring 35 down 240th Street to County Road Elm, and that detour will be in place approximately 3 to 4 days. Message boards you'll see going up next week, notifying the public a week in advance that that project will be going on there. And that's about it we got going on this month.
Any questions?
That's all.
That's it.
All in the good weather.
All in the good weather.
Good. Okay, thanks, Mo.
Yep.
Sheriff, what have you got?
Focus today really is about the geo tour, so we'll be doing that after the meeting here. Just a few things going on. Very much a lot of drug activity in May. We had 26 felony arrests and 11 misdemeanor arrests with 11 search warrants that we did in May. So we've really been hitting it hard. And most of it is meth related. You know, we're still seeing that as such a problem in the county. It's been a really bad week for fatalities. We had a motorcyclist killed last week down by Farmington. And we had 2 subjects killed Friday night down by Dresser. So we're actually at 8 fatalities for the year. And unfortunately, that's on pace for what we normally see. You know, we see usually around 10 to 12 a year. So, you know, we work hard at traffic enforcement, but we're in a rural area with high speeds, and you know, we do the best we can with it. The jail, we have 65 for current population, which is an uptick. You know, we did dip down to 40 at one point. So with the busyness of summer, we're starting to see the population come up. And then once we get the courts going, we expect that we'll get very back to normal as far as our population, which is usually around 90 to 100. We had 1 dispatcher resign in the last couple weeks. And we've had a jailer that is resigning to pursue going to the police academy. So we're hoping to keep him as a part-time jail staff, and then he's going to pursue his dream of becoming an officer, a sworn officer. Other than that, we still have 2 on layoff through the jail, and we hope by the end of July to bring those 2 members back once we get the jail population up.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of the sheriff's report? Or comments? All right, go ahead.
I assume most of the recent thefts are related to the drug deal, because I mean,
Absolutely.
been several vehicles and that stuff missing too.
The drug is the hub of so much dysfunction. We see, you know, family violence, we see violent crime, we see property crimes, and it's all related to that drug problem.
No, nothing's changed. Okay, thank you very much. I don't know what we've been doing on the ATV UTV program, but we'd like to get something rolling in reference to establishing a committee so that we can get some organization and some ideas and programs started, collecting information from other counties, just generally trying to get an idea of which direction we're going to be going. We need to form a committee with a number of individuals that would, my understanding, would be appointed by you, Vince, as a committee member
Of the committee?
of the committee.
Okay, I know I've talked with Mr. Rowdy and he had 3 names. Can I say these?
Yeah.
Dan Carlson, Doug Johnson, and Rick McWigan.
Okay, and where are they located?
Rick is from the south and Joel talked to him. And
He's right down by my place, right off of,
Gotcha.
He lives on
He's
X.
been there, right?
He's on the Farmington Town Board.
Oh, well, then we've got a pretty well-organized group. We've got to establish what we want as far as a group, I mean, a committee, the number of members. I would assume that we want at least 2 potentially from the county, preferably from the highway committee. You know, they're the ones that are kind of in junction. I think Doug has done a lot of work, a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge already in how this program is going to proceed. So I would assume that we, if we have a committee of 5, does that sound reasonable as far as, and that's not too many to get information flowing in. So I certainly would hope that Doug will accept the position. And one other one that may be interested, would, you know, let me know if you have an inclination to participate in that committee.
I hate to see Doug go by himself.
you're gonna help.
You already told me that before.
I just wanted to get you to say it.
Is that a volunteer?
It would have to be.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
at the last meeting, there was some discussion about the committee has to be formally created through corporate counsel.
Correct. That was my next move.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So now that we have the names of the committee, we will somehow pursue that with corporate counsel to present to the county board, hopefully, in the next meeting, if we can. That would be next,
Yeah, we should be all right.
yeah. Hopefully we can get that done. Can you follow through with that, Doug? You would be the closest to it. And then your committee can form its own organization once it's formed. So if we get to the county board by the next, by the next county board meeting, that will give us yet some time this summer, which is when things are active. I'm telling you, it's very active. In other counties, I was over in Barron County twice, and, they're just rampant with the ATVs all over they're like ants over there. And they're very, very active.
Sure.
And they've created some new spots. And I noticed one over by south of Elmina. I didn't get a chance to scrutinize it or take a look at it too close, but it's an off-road area where they recreate and take off from there to other areas.
Yeah.
So they're constantly developing recreational portions of the situation, which would be probably a trail designated as trail rather than a route.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Up in the campground where I am, it's northeast of Cumberland by Silver Lake.
Right,
There was 4 of them that headed out on Thursday night. And they went all the way up to Lake Superior. And they put on, I think he said it was like 187 miles, the 4 of them. So they go, you
oh, I
know.
know that. Yeah, yeah, some of these people are putting on several thousand miles a year on these things.
Mr. Chairman,
They're going somewhere and shopping.
This is the highlight of how dedicated these ATV people are, because I attended the Farmington Town Board meeting last night. 30th Avenue, which is right west of Farmington, east and west of Farmington, and 280th, that's a river road. So there's a intersection there, T, where you come to the river road, and Dan Walters keeps it mowed and everything there, he's a neighbor. And some ATV people had kind of dug it up and done some damage there, which the town was aware of. And by gosh, they located these people and they made them right the damage they did. And they do a very, people that I know in the clubs, they do a very good job of making sure that the speed limits and all the laws are followed. I know last year that on 280th there, that River Road was kind of a thoroughfare. And there were some people that were speeding, I guess, and some of the other people that were on the clubs, they had seen them and they tracked them down. One of them was a local veterinarian, and he admitted that he had been about 55 in the 35, and he didn't know there was a speed limit, he said. And so I think that's one organization that needs some credit for policing themselves. I think that's pretty much all over, Doug. Yeah, they're very diligent about.
They seem to be, and that's part of the program. Go ahead, Doug.
just one more comment on creating the committee.
Yeah,
I think, Vince, you told me that Mark Gosman, the forester.
I think in the last meeting, we discussed it would be good to have him, and I don't know if he's a member of the committee,
that's my point.
but Mark and
Yeah,
could be
Yeah,
involved in it,
Because
certainly.
there is talk of having some trails on the county land,
correct.
so he
But
should be
You
involved.
see your committee, yeah,
Or we could just invite him to that.
that's exactly what we're probably, if we keep the committee down for the decision-making to 5 members, then you definitely, we got the sheriff's patrol too, that wants to become, that should become active and helpful in recreation.
Right.
In the activity itself, so, but these people probably don't wanna go in the decision-making when you're trying to get a grant or something like
We can do
that,
it that way.
unless they're involved in participating in some type of land requisition or something like that. In order to get the grant, they could certainly help. But inviting them in as a friend, so to speak, of the committee and getting things organized, they wouldn't have to devote their time to all the committee meetings and other things that are involved.
Yeah.
Only when they've got something to contribute. I think that'll work.
The other one, and maybe Don could help me too, there's a recreational officer.
Correct, we just talked with the sheriff's office.
What's his name?
TJ Smith.
Yeah, he would definitely be an intricate part of your program as you proceed along and add them, so.
Mr. Chair, Don Girls lives on 280th, and then so does one of our other officers, so everybody's scared of them.
Okay. Okay, well, good, we want
Except your
some,
wife.
somebody's gotta take over and handle that type of a problem. All right, anything else on that now? We can get that, you wanna follow through and give me a call on it, and I can meet with Malia too, whenever you guys that's something you get set up.
I can get your phone numbers if you have.
Yeah. Joe's got one. Okay. And I've got Danny's at home, so I'll call him. All right, I'll follow.
Then you guys, once you get formed, you can organize your own as far as a committee chairman and that type of thing. Okay, good. We'll get moving on that hopefully next month. CJCC, do we have any comments other than the fact we were at a meeting?
I'm gonna have Don Wortham,
Yeah,
who's our interim coordinator, give you kind of a update on the statement of work, but just an overview. We've just about completed the first 90 days of the statement of work. I think that they've made a lot of progress. We're about to sign for the next 90 days. As a reminder, UW Extension agreed to provide Don's services to us as part of our existing contract, no additional cost. And we're holding off hiring a new coordinator until we revamp the CJCC. He's made a lot of progress on that. Financially, CJCC will still be in a hole, but we've made up a lot of ground keeping that position open. Chairman Luke asked me, I think last month at the CJCC meeting, what the exposure is for the board for this year. It's probably $30,000 to $40,000 that'll come out of the general fund for the CJCC. Considering we were at 90,000, we made up a lot of ground. So Don will give you kind of an update on where we stand with the organization.
okay, great. I wanted to comment on the fact that at the meeting, I'm glad you are here in reference to enlightening the rest of us of what's going on, because I'm totally impressed with the progress of this organization. I mean, we're talking about the budget and the amounts of money that are expended by the county can well be made up in short order with a couple of success stories in this organization. And the way they're getting organized with the assistance that we're getting is absolutely amazing to me. And I'm I'll turn it over to you, Don.
Thank you, Chairman Luke. I appreciate it. Is it possible to get that PowerPoint up? Chad, thank you. I think Chad's covered some of this, so we'll go to the next slide. Just to briefly reframe, Extension and the county signed a document called a Statement of Work back April 20th of this year. Forgive me if I'm blocking anyone. And the idea is to hit some major deliverables over the 90 to up to 270 days of, maybe I should just skip the PowerPoint. Stop right here for a second. One of the things we want to do is we want to look forward and see how the CJCC ought to operate in the future. So the statement of work is basically a set of ground rules for the next 90 to 270 days. Is essentially we're going to create some work products for the county. So far what we've done is we've got that statement of work in place. We've got a management structure in place to govern the CJCC in the interim before a new coordinator is named. I'm the interim coordinator, and I will step aside once our contract is done, our engagement's done. So what I want to do for the next just couple of minutes is update you on progress. So Chad, to the next slide. One of the first things we want to do is take the pulse of the folks that are on the CJCC board. This is a big group. It's a big, diverse group. To date, I've interviewed 15 folks, try to get their sense of what they see as the key outcomes for the CJCC. What do you want the CJCC to do? And what kind of issues or opportunities are you seeing for the CJCC? What's going to be a success or what might be a hindrance? Okay. Two messages come across loud and clear across this diverse group. You know, they seem like pretty simple, but the CJCC is here to reduce crime and increase public safety in the county. That maps onto, as Vince said, one of the 4 priorities that you've all established for the county. So it has the possibility of delivering some real good to the citizens here. Reduce crime, and then the secondary part of that is reduce recidivism. We don't need to have return guests to the hotel. We also want to increase across this board offender accountability. And maybe that's a really important driver. If we can't get offenders to take responsibility for their own lives, move forward to positive change, it's going to be challenging to get that top level goal of reducing crime. So that's really an important focus of the CJCC and its programs. Talking to these stakeholders, these are some things that we heard, or I heard, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to block you for a second, Mo, if that's okay. Also you, Captain Drew. As a CJCC board, we don't always understand the roles of the other stakeholders. There's this sort of elephant versus the elephant's trunk situation happening with the members of that board. It's a complex system, the system that moves people through justice, and we've got to work on operational effectiveness of the programs in the CJC. There's some gains that we can make by just becoming more effective and efficient. There's a little bit of a tension within the CJCC, and we all want to take time to get it right, but we also want to get a quick win if we can. There's some comments about the functioning of the CJCC and the board and the committees. I think the general sense is the committees have not been doing as much work as they could be. The current committees are a data committee, an OWI committee, and a program committee. And having sat on one of those, I say we meet infrequently and we haven't got a lot of work done yet. So we could do some improvement there. We need to improve, relook at the CJCC coordinator position itself, better define what the roles and responsibilities of that person are. One of the big issues that we've got, and the sheriff touched on it, we've got a crime problem in the county, and that means we've got high case volumes in the courts, and there's a lot of derivative impacts of that. That came across loud and clear. From time to time across this big group, this board, there's misaligned incentives. Essentially one part of the organization is incentivized for doing something one way, and it works counter to another part. Can we look at that and try to get some things ironed out? There's sort of a tension between a flexible set of programs and ones that are consistent. That's a typical thing you find in business. Am I going to be flexible in how I operate, or am I going to be consistent? So that's a tension within the CJCC. A real concern was we don't necessarily have actionable data. So if we're going to move toward being a data-driven organization, we got to figure out where our data is going to come from. Is it going to be valid data, and how are we going to operate against it? There's sort of this tension between expanding the reach of the programs and serving particular populations well. So you think about first-time offenders. If you want to reduce recidivism, you want to catch folks early in their career as a criminal, if you want to look at it that way, and help them avoid making that second mistake. So we've got to look at that program mix. There's some, and I don't mean to contradict the sheriff, this is just me reporting out, but there's a tension in the CJCC about whether alcohol is our biggest problem or meth. Again, I'm just the reporter here. There's this notion that we've really got to get our offenders to become more accountable. And we don't have a group necessarily within the county that's, often it's a group of committed folks from a faith community that would be advocates for those folks, trying to get them on a path of accountability. So we need to try to build that up. I mentioned the opportunities for first-time or early offenders. So these are just what came out of those interviews I've done so far. I've got another 3 scheduled. This will be ongoing. I'll try to tie it up over the next 2 weeks. So I think we're going to be able to do some work on these. If you go to the next slide, Chad. Over the term of our contract, I would imagine we'll be able to work on this understanding of stakeholder roles. I hope we can make our programs a little more operationally effective. We're going to figure out how to get the board and its committees working better together. I've got a proposal in front of the executive committee about a new committee structure. One of my deliverables for this month is a revised job description for the coordinator. We're going to be able to solve some of the actionable data issues, build a comparison set of counties that can be normalized by population. We can look at that, try to figure out what a meaningful reduction in crime might look like. We're taking a look already at some programs we could add to hit specific targeted populations, especially with first-time offenders. And we're going to get better at communicating within our committee and also without, with the rest of the county. So those are in blue, the items I think we're going to be able to take action on during this contract. So here's what we got done so far. I mentioned the interviews we've done so far. 13 of 15 have completed. Building this comparison set of counties to get data in your hands so you can see what the status of Polk County is relative to other counties in terms of offenses and arrests, that sort of thing. We're building an operational plan for the CJC programs, and I believe we'll have that drafted that by August 1st. This is all going into a project management tool to help everybody that's associated with the program see what's going on. I mentioned the revised list of CJCC committees, and at this point, I'll just entertain any questions the committee may have for me related to the CJCC.
Anybody have any questions? It's a complex organization,
It is, sir.
and I can understand why they have many questions at this time. The one question they're going to identify with originally or occasionally, eventually, is the cost factor and the offsetting of the cost factor. And there's a lot of information that you've touched upon already that I'm familiar with from past experience with this committee that will come out as a result of your efforts right now that will satisfy the county board pretty well, I'm sure, financially. I'm confident in that.
And let me touch on that for the committee before you see the budget when it comes out. So CJCC was originally, the concept was it would be totally funded with grant dollars and outside funds. That did not come to fruition. We budgeted on supposition, and the supposeds, a lot of them didn't come to fruition, which is why we are where we are. For 2021, there will be levy dollars attached to the CJCC. There's no way around it. But we're operating under a philosophy of developing a firm business plan, a firm approach, looking for specific outcomes, and then figuring out what it costs to run it, and then finding the funding. The approach of build it and they will come didn't work. We're trying to build the appropriate thing for what we need right now, fund it, and then grow it as need be. I will tell you, it's very hard for something like the CJCC to find successes when you're in a rebuilding phase, plus we've got the COVID situation going on with the courts and the jail and lockdown and all that. But I will say one of the successes is in treatment court, we presently have 16 participants. 17 is our max, and we have 16, and of those 16, we've actually added 4 during the COVID outbreak. So treatment court has been progressing. We've actually put some new initiatives in place, like follicle testing. We did that for the first time this past Thursday. So we get 6 months of follicular drug testing, which is much more precise and exact than urine testing what we were doing. So we just did that for the first time in cooperation with the sheriff's office facilities. So, I mean, there are small successes there, but I just want the committee to understand that until we get this ship righted and the work that Don and Julie and Sharon and Lisa are doing is amazing, there will be some levy exposure until that's correct.
Very good. Any questions as a result of those comments? Go ahead.
I'm very well informed on a lot of this stuff. And I did know that they had the hair follicles and stuff this Thursday. And it's a good thing, but it's hard to keep them on path. And all you gotta do is just keep trying, and hopefully you don't drop out or get nailed so that because I know there's been quite a few relapses. But it's a hard drug.
It's a tough program.
And I think the approach that Don has developed is the effective one, because Julie, Sharon, our 2 substance abuse counselors, have completely learned to do it. They're very active in the redesign approach. He's reached out to all the stakeholders, and this is, the method we should use, because it is very hard as a multidisciplinary approach, but it is not a quick response program. It's not one where you're realistically gonna see quick wins.
Yeah.
It's gradual wins, but there are things we're doing. The follicle testing we're gonna do every quarter. Right now, I think we can fund it where we are and not worsen our position. And we're gonna try to figure out in the next budget, how to fund it ongoing through grants. But those are things we can strengthen the program, and the judges are on board, which is the key point, is keeping Judge Tolan engaged in the program. This, you know, we've got him very engaged right now. And I will say, a quick one that I do think is important, we got our first referral to drug court from the DA's office that we've ever had. So we're getting the DA's office involved, which is hats off to Sharon and Julie and Don for getting engagement from across the board, which is what we wanted from this program.
That's kind of what I've been trying to relate about the impression that I have of the organization and getting organized of this group. And I'm pretty positive on the progress that they're going to make. I just see the fill-ins from the past that are now coming, are being fulfilled, so that we can, and I'm sure we'll enjoy a lot better group. We give them an opportunity to, it's been my hope that we will give them an opportunity to, you know, to show what their program is, and under Don's guidance, I'm confident of what's going to happen. And so I think we should hold off any type of criticism until we get a little time in this. So, okay, anything else for Don? Appreciate your insight.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I didn't hear what you said.
Okay. Identifying matters for the next meeting. The one thing I'd like,
Do you want to just identify Don for the public,
identify Don.
who he was, to give a presentation?
Oh, should I stand up and say it?
Yeah, go ahead and,
It's just somebody from the public asking.
Right. Don Wortham, I'm an educator with UW Extension here in Polk County.
and coordinating the
And interim
CJCC.
CJCC coordinator. Thank you.
And doing a job for us, right?
Is there a question?
No, they were just
Just a
wondering who you were.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Thanks, Don.
For the next meeting, the one thing we do want to identify is hopefully we will be able to introduce our new ATV, UTV committee and have them here and just kind of share whatever they may have as far as input to this committee, and the committee vice versa, share with them what we would expect that they may be able to perform or to do in the short term at least, and get started. So I hopefully we'll make sure that they're at the next meeting. Any other subject matter that might be interesting for the next meeting that you want to
Mr. Chair,
go ahead?
I haven't had a chance to share this with anybody because it just got finalized last Friday. But we'll have something on the next meeting. And last Friday, I got 5 letters. I basically, Chris appointed me to take Larry Jepson's place in the Wisconsin County Association. And I got 5 letters from the chairman last Friday, and I've been appointed to 5 steering committees: the Ag Environmental, the Highway, Personnel and Finance, Judicial and Public Safety, and Health and Human Services. These meetings are 3 times a year, and basically in Stevens Point. And but right now, they're going to be Zoom meetings. Their Health and Human Services will be this Friday at, it'll be here, and it's going to be a Zoom meeting. Now, the one that this committee is involved in is next Tuesday is our Transportation and Public Works Steering Committee. And there's actually 18 people on this committee. And this really affects us. Dan Federle is the executive director of the Wisconsin counties. Ron Chamberlain is, one of the officers, and what's Bar's name?
Dan Bar.
Dan Bar, yeah. So they're all gonna be here on the Zoom, Tuesday at 9 o'clock. And I certainly want, our highway commissioner, it'd be really informative if all the board members could be there. One thing that was quite a surprise to me is, and I just haven't had a chance to talk to you about it, is Wisconsin wants to get more people on a better route to northern Wisconsin. And if you take the 3 routes north right now, it's Highway 35, which goes through Somerset, Farmington, Dresser, Osceola, St. Croix Falls. The other, there's a Route 46, which is Baldwin, Amory, and then splits with 63. And Highway 65, which is we call a horse trail. And we had a 3-way conference last Friday with Dan Trederly, the executive director, and Dave Osnes and myself, and we're really pushing this, that we would like to have a, what you call rebuilt or new Highway 65. It's the only really clear route, going north. Right now, the only jog is through Star Prairie Main Street, but if, that the back street in Star Prairie is just right a straight shot. And there's really not a bad corner or anything in the whole. So we'll definitely have some discussion on that. And the what the steering committee does is they come up with resolutions. Like I think Friday is our first one on health and human services, and I think there's at least a half a dozen resolutions coming from counties. And maybe later on will be when we get something figured out. This county could be have a resolution on Highway 65 and what the possibilities and what could happen. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, when is your meeting and where?
It'll be here.
Where?
It'll be in Balsam Lake. Tuesday, it's a Zoom meeting, 9 a.m. and all these passwords and everything are on here. This is the one for human services. I haven't gotten the one from highway yet, but I waited till 11:30 today because it should be in the mail today. So, but all the DOT, is gonna have a rep and all the Wisconsin County offices. Everything really goes through the Wisconsin County Association that goes to the legislature.
Mr. Chair, to your point, I mean, Highway 65, the horse trail, as you call it, it feels like that at night. But when you come from the cities now on GPS, it brings you across the highway or across the new bridge and up 65.
I don't know, have you had a chance to have a count on it in the last 2 years or so?
No, the state had that, but I haven't got with Beth on what the new numbers are.
The new numbers are, and what they do is they cut off on 40th Avenue, a lot of them, and they cut off on 40th Avenue and they take over to Church Road, and then they hit 65 there. And boy, since that new bridge, it's, I don't know, double, triple, whatever, but it is way more than that road can handle, which I'm sure you know. So that's exciting.
It's not a matter of how many take Highway 65 north, it's how many survive it.
That's about it. You're lucky you survived that route.
It's been a bad road for one.
And the state has always been reluctant to work with you.
Try to give it to you many times.
But I think it really has some good, I think there's some excitement about it. And if the transportation people seem to be behind it. Dave Lockness was just awful excited.
Well, that's money. It's encouraging.
Will they be emailing us, John, on that, or how are we gonna be notified as a committee? That meeting's gonna occur,
Yeah,
especially the one for highway, I mean, when and how are we notified of that?
Is that gonna be set up by the clerk then, to be in a boardroom or somewhere we can all watch it?
I've gotta go and talk to her about it. Tanya's gonna set everything up for this, starts this Friday at Health and Human Services. And she's gonna set it up for Friday, so.
If,
publish it somewhere.
I'm gonna say if you could, if you're gonna have the clerk's office set that up.
Yeah.
If I can get it from her, I'll make sure that I send it out to everybody.
Okay.
And all of us would be invited to participate.
I'm sure you would.
So we would need we'd obviously need to post it, but,
I'm hoping that it's in the mail today. I sat there, waited till 11:30.
Well, that'd be the 14th, so I would assume, is that correct?
It definitely will be,
Oh, 7 days
because,
from today.
here's what the letter said. It's my pleasure to appoint you to serve on the transportation. And the meetings are Tuesday, July 14th. And it's in a conference, but it's in, they aren't having any virtual, so it's all Zoom.
it's all soon. No, okay, gotcha.
All right. Well, that's good news, and that's information, that's good.
Dave said that he also submitted my name for the vice president and president-elect. That's what Larry Jepson just got done with his term, and I actually held that position in 05 and 06.
They know you, and they actually know you. And it's still good. Interesting. Congratulations, Johnny, that's a
I
good job.
survived.
I know you, I would highly recommend that you take that position. Get you out of the county. All right, anybody that want to, on this jail tour, that hasn't been on the jail tour, that should probably take it or go again. Did you want to go, Steve?
Sure.
Okay, Steve, go. Johnny, you want to do it again?
I think maybe I'm gonna go and visit with the clerk and try and get some of these things set up.
You going?
If I
Wanna go again,
get that in
Doug?
the mail today, I'll get it.
Okay, I've been on it enough
I might even
times.
brought it up to her again.
I probably are gonna pass on it.
I went last year.
Yeah, I've gone several years. Yeah, it's you, Kate and old back.
You had problems and Larry had problems.
Yeah. All right, what we're gonna do then, I would assume, and be okay, is we can adjourn to the jail tour. And when you're done with the jail tour, we'll go wherever we want. Okay,
So do you need a motion?
I need a motion to adjourn
To adjourn after
to the jail tour. Yeah,
I
and
would
a
so move.
Second.
She could write that up right.
motion made and seconded. You get it up right? No matter.
I'll get it, don't worry.
Okay.
Sure. All right, we stand adjourned.
I get to wear some of those red rubber slippers.
You can.